Hi, and welcome back to the Recruitment and Beyond podcast. We've gone to a weekly episode now, so we're going to discuss all the challenges, the issues, the successes and so on that are going on in the HR departments across the UK and further afield. So we thought we'd get ourselves on here weekly. So Natalie, good to see you. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's Friday. Here we are again, as usual, isn't it? And yeah, it's been good. We were at the first Growth Summit in Scotland yesterday. So an excellent day. Claire Nelson of Scottish Netball was there. Yes. Brilliant. All about obviously being you, and this is what today's all about. Well, this is what our podcasts are about, aren't we? Disclaimer. Also, being our authentic self. So that was in terms of yesterday was great. All the different seminars and people that were there, brilliant group. But also really powerful message in terms of being authentic, both obviously in life, but in the workplace. Businesses need everyone to be authentic. So just a disclaimer for this. This is our opinion. This is our thoughts. If you don't like them, we want to hear how you disagree as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we want to hear as many different opinions as we possibly can. This is going to be our take on what HR is happening, what's happening in HR this week. And if you disagree, please get in touch. Drop your notes in the comments, and we'll tackle that next time. Because the more opportunities we get to discuss these things, the better. So yes, absolutely.
And how's your week been? What have you been up to?
Wow, it's been a busy week actually, and I had a fantastic night last night. We were hosting an event for the Chartered Institute of Marketing on marketing in the metaverse, which was fascinating. When they do come to the UK, I'm going to get myself a set of Apple Vision Pro goggles. These things were amazing. I have to say I've never done much in it, but they're very cool. You can link it up to your MacBook and your phone, and you can do it's all with your hands here now. You can do all this. It's amazing. It's very it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So it was a great night, good discussion in Glasgow, and I had a good bunch of marketers around to discuss how to take it forward. So no, been a busy week. Very good. So yeah, I mean, the hot topic over the last couple of weeks has been bullying, I guess. Obviously around the news story around Christian Horner and the guys at Red Bull. Now, obviously we're not going to comment too much on the individual aspects of that story, but it's in the press. People have been talking about it, and we want to try and take some of these topics and discuss them and look at how HR departments can manage some of these issues that will probably come up in their teams as well. So yeah, I guess I wanted to just look at, like, I suppose first of all, what steps do you put in place? Like, what do you do when something like this comes around and you have an issue like this, whether it's a more senior person or a junior person who's having issues around bullying? Can you talk us through some of the steps that you might put in place and say, right, here's what we do. This is step 1, step 2, step 3.
Absolutely. I think we need to have, first of all, that, and we throw this word culture about so much, don't we? But it really is key at the moment. We need to make sure that people are happy and able to, not happy, that's not the best word, is it really? Comfortable and able to call these things out, because actually we don't want all these things festering, really. And if there is an issue, kind of business and organisation is best to know about it, to either agree, disagree, fix it, whatever, put some learnings in place, training, whatever that might look like, but actually bringing it to the table is the best thing that can be done. There might just be like the silent quitters that just say, oh, got a personal issue, I'm leaving, and they just go. That's no good for business. We need to know what the issues are. So getting that culture of it's okay to raise these things, something will be done about it, we'll take it seriously, we'll go through the steps. So first of all, and that's a massive piece of work, that's not really something that you can do overnight, particularly if you're starting off in an unfavourable position of not having that culture. So getting that fixed, first of all, getting that sorted, and getting a clear process, treating all parties right through that process as well. And from the alleged as well, sometimes we're too busy thinking about obviously the person that's making the allegations, but also how do we protect the person that the allegations are against? Because in a lot of occasions, it's maybe not malice or not how anyone was ever intended. It's maybe a behavioural or a training item, but also protecting them as well, but showing that things are happening and moving, and any recommendations are discussed and shared so that the process is as transparent as possible. Obviously, you won't see everything that's going on in the process. You won't see all the depth and the detail, but making sure there's a clear process there. And things aren't just, and it happens everywhere, kind of thrown under the rug. Let's bring, oh God, here again. Like, we do not want that behaviour in the organisation. So let's pretend it just hasn't existed or doesn't exist. Let's call it out and let's deal with it. And that will be the best way that people will then start coming and telling. And also not just about, like, the chat at the door is great, but what else are you doing throughout the year that gets their views? So from your engagement surveys, asking those particular questions, and it's not a case of are you being bullied, but certain cleverly worded questions that can give a business owner or the senior leaders kind of a visage of what they're only there so far in the business, aren't they? And many times they're not seeing the nitty-gritty of what's happening. But if they can maybe see some commentary in terms of how it's feeling, then absolutely, or get someone external in to see. Sometimes you're just too far in it and you can't actually, or you don't want to believe it, or you don't want to see it. You don't want to see what's happening there. So maybe getting someone else in to look at that for you as well.
Yeah, I suppose that was what I was going to ask. Is that a good approach? Actually, it's almost better to bring somebody independent and likes of Beyond HR or anybody really, to bring them in and to do that investigation, because quite often you're too close to it, particularly if you're a senior leader in the organisation.
And it might be against you. Or it might be,
it
might be against like someone in your peers that you just think, oh God, yeah, they do have a certain style, and is that reasonable? Is it not reasonable? So maybe having an expert or someone that's dealing with the process every day of their life, or can comment on best practice elsewhere as well, is sometimes a good move as well. And remember, we might tell you how it is, but it's down to the organisation whether you agree, you want to do something about it or not. It's only our recommendations. You are still absolutely the decision maker in terms of what you want to do or what you want to ignore or what you don't want to see is happening. But just in any business, that fresh pair of eyes is sometimes a good move, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think you touched on it before about transparency, but actually not owning it. But I think every business makes mistakes. Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. And like you said, you can't be across every aspect of your business all the time. So things do happen. So I suppose it goes back to using your surveys, using your insight, getting that employee engagement. I think we've talked about this quite a bit, is that employee communication and discussion, and keeping an eye on these sort of things. So obviously the HR departments will be looking at that, just providing insight to the board and to the organisation to say,
absolutely,
we've seen a slight change, we've seen a slight development in some of the more negative comments. Do we have an issue? And it's then about action, isn't it? I think quite often, like you said, well, we've had the reports back. We can see a slight change. That's fine. Just brush it under the carpet. It's about action, isn't it? It's about acting on those things a bit quicker than perhaps letting them fester.
Yeah, and get the guys to tell you, like, done quite a few focus groups and stuff as well, which is great. So getting a wee bit more meat on the bone. If the survey hasn't given you any of the specifics, then getting people in, not to tell about their story, because they might not want to do that, but what do they see? What do they hear in the organisation or business every day? And can they give you some further insight as to understanding a wee bit more of the issues as well? Is always nice, isn't it? Just to see what's happening, or it might just be one particular department, or it might be one particular leader. It might not be the whole organisation, but that can fester away, can't it?
Yeah. I mean, it builds from there, doesn't it? And that issue where you've got one issue in one department perhaps leads on to other people and other teams, and the next thing you know, there's a bigger issue. So, I guess just thinking about reputational damage and how you kind of manage these processes. I guess once it comes to the fore, it's about being open and honest as much as you can, because obviously there's some confidential aspects to this.
Yeah.
But if you're a massive brand, then you're going to have to make sure that you can go out there and be honest with people and say, look, we're dealing with it. We're taking this on board. We're taking both sides, thoughts on this, and we are dealing with it. Is it important that you manage that communication to the broader company and then to the outside world as well?
Absolutely, and you probably have to get some experts in for that as well, because what you want to say might not be really legally what you should be saying. And I guess it's so hard, isn't it? The media jump on, businesses have grievances every day. There are cultural problems in a lot of businesses. Like, it's normal. It is normal, unfortunately. But the media will pick on big, large corporates, and they'll jump on, and everything will be in the paper. And how do they go about trying to protect their reputation? Because you don't want your service or your product being impacted on maybe something that's happening in one of the branches that that might end up being unfounded, or in a lot of cases maybe be blown out of proportion as well, or not be fixable. Like it can be fixed, remember? So it's very, very difficult, isn't it? So that's where people have to engage in experts to see actually what is their bar line, what should they want to respond, are they able to respond as well, or should they just stay quiet and stay silent?
Yeah, I mean, I guess nobody wants to have bullying throughout their organisation, and nobody wants to have that situation, but it does arise. So actually having that crisis comms plan, having that action plan in place, so actually that can give people a bit of security as well. Is to say, look, here's our policy, we have an approach to bullying. You know, the bullying, and they don't need to see the crisis comms part, but the ability to be able to come to senior leaders and people in the organisation and just own up to it and say, you know, here's the step, here's the process. I feel like I'm being bullied. It gives people the confidence. That's the sort of organisation you want to try and create, isn't it?
And the biggest thing at the moment is the word bullying is used a lot, isn't it? It's used a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the only word because people don't know how to describe that behaviour. But it's really interesting to see, is it unreasonable behaviour or is it bullying? And that's a lot of the work that we do throughout that process. Actually, what's the person's kind of intention, but what is the person, what is bullying to them? How do they describe bullying? And actually, is that really the case, or is it inappropriate behaviour? Bullying and inappropriate behaviour are two very, very different things, aren't they? Bullying is a very strong word, but as I said, people use it because there's maybe not an alternative to use, and they describe their behaviour as that, but it might not be bullying. It's still unreasonable and it's still absolutely zero tolerance. But a lot of time is trying to navigate whether is it bullying or is it something else.
Do you think bullying's too strong a term then? Do you think bullying's too strong a term sometimes, or is it, you know, like you say, there's different levels of this. So is there different levels of that where you can say, like, that classifies as bullying? Are you finding that, you mentioned that you're finding that quite a bit, there's actually kind of differences in what people are describing to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it might be used wrong. It's used interchangeably with a lot of other things that are happening.
Right.
But sometimes people don't know other words maybe to use, but on the flip, they're very strong, and actually that is what they believe, that is the word, and that's what they see the behaviour as. So there's lots that goes into in terms of, is it bullying or is it inappropriate behaviour or is it something else? All of them are as bad as each other, obviously. It's unacceptable regardless if it's bullying or not. It's still unacceptable behaviour, but a lot goes around in terms of, I've been bullied, and then it's right, let's really get to it. Are you being bullied, or is it inappropriate behaviour in some other way, shape or form, or is it even worse than bullying as well?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. And you know, as part of that process where you perhaps, you know, you guys are brought in as part of that investigation, do you find that there's you know, people do tend to take the advice from you because it's independent? You know, they'll take on the advice and they'll take that a more robust approach, whereas, I mean, obviously it's been highlighted that they've done an internal investigation, if you like, at Red Bull and managed that process internally. Is it better to have an external organisation come in, an independent organisation, to look at that and review it? Does it make it better for obviously, hopefully there's a better outcome, but does it make it better for our brand to be able to manage that process?
I'm going to be biased, obviously. I'm going to say we should be in, but no, seriously, whether it's Beyond HR or whatever else, like, sometimes you just can't see it because you're too far in, but also the time and the resource needed when we're going through a process. Like, we're doing this as our job. Many people that are trying to deal with the process have many other hats on and will not give, I'll be brutally honest, will not give the process what it needs. Right. To get some kinds of, we've got to show that we've been able to reasonably form some kinds of conclusion and recommendations. But if you've not really spoken to everybody, if you've not done everything that you've had to do, if you've not done the right questioning techniques, if you've not done all of the things that you have to do, really will you get to that reasonable outcome? And for many people, they're like, I cannot be bothered with this process. It needs done, it's serious, but I need someone in. And you don't have to take an advice. Like, you don't. That's the joys of what we do. You don't have to take our advice.
Yeah.
We will provide recommendations, but you really don't have to take those if you don't agree with it. If you don't want to, if you want to do other things, we can work with you on how we maybe meet in the middle or what we do. but don't have to take advice. But an external is sometimes good because they have a view on many different things that are happening across industry and sectors at the same time, and the level of experience with dealing with this day to day.
I guess I find that perhaps if you bring somebody independent in, you're more likely to get an honest answer from some people. Perhaps they might be more guarded if they're asked a question about senior leaders bullying them, or people in a senior position, giving them difficulties or challenging them. They might be more honest and more open with someone who they've never met before. They might have that opportunity to really open up and tell people how it is, rather than somebody who they know or who they might perceive will be going then off to tell people and to tell senior leaders this is exactly what they said.
Yeah, because I guess we're dealing with them as people, but we don't know their families. We don't know we don't know any of that detail. So it is a bit more black and white for us to make better decisions because we don't have all of that in the background going on. So it is, from that point of view, it can sometimes help, and that's maybe why we are brought in as well, because I know that senior leader, I can't really interview him, there's conflict there, or I know he's going through a really hard time and actually this is the last thing he needs and I don't want to be sat in front of him. So no, absolutely, that might be another reason as well. That could be.
And not to get you to divulge any massive secrets, but do you find the outcome of these things, does it generally tend to be that someone has to move on or somebody leaves or something, or is there a bunch of situations where there's a resolution found and actually people go back and deal with it in a mature way?
You'll be probably quite surprised. Like,
really,
if someone, a lot of the time, the cheesy feedback's a gift, isn't it? Some people are very unaware of how their behaviour has actually caused someone to feel. So sometimes at the end of that process, we may have to go into mediation, getting two people in a room, getting through it, raising the roof, like getting everything out on the table. This is how you make me feel. Oh God. And the person sometimes has no idea. And sometimes at the end, there's a different kind of perspective. And then people can go back to work. In some cases, it's irreparable. It's too late because we've just ignored it for so long. So you can there's lots of options, whether you move people departments, whether sometimes if you're moving the alleged, then that behaviour will just manifest somewhere else, won't it? You can move people about. In some cases, someone decides actually it's not worth it. We're here once. I love my job, but actually I can go and do my job somewhere else. Remember, people leave. Managers, they don't leave jobs mainly. They leave managers. So we always kind of have to remember that at times as well. But there can be mediation. There can be stubbornness though. People might just accept that actually this is just the way I manage and this is my management style and tough.
And that's it.
We get that as well. Like, that's tough. If we can get the parties in a room at the end of the process, and then sometimes it blows up, tears, trauma and everything in between, and then some people are able to move on, and we just kind of monitor that relationship and make sure that it's still going the way that it maybe needs to go as well. But there's lots of different twists and turns and kind of resolution, and I think an organisation is always quite wary of saying, yes, there's been inappropriate behaviour. But sometimes there is, and it's better just to be dead honest and say, yes, but here's the 10 things we're going to do. We've really learned from this, and this is what we're going to do. That'll put you in the best place. You can sit and deny it, absolutely, if you're worried about it, but you might genuinely believe that it's not happening as well. Like, you might genuinely believe it's just been blown out of proportion.
No, absolutely. And I suppose as part of that, obviously there was a report out this week, I think it was this week anyway, from the Parliamentary Treasury Committee about HR departments and their role in, I suppose what they called it, protecting organisations, protecting reputation over dealing with wellbeing, dealing with harassment, dealing with issues that people have faced, particularly as they highlighted around sexual harassment in the organisations. And it was interesting to see that. And to be honest, it's a bit of a scathing report on HR department. So it'd be interesting to get your take on that and to see, that's part of that whole process. It's part of that whole thing around bullying and harassment. So it's interesting to see what your thoughts were on that.
Blame us. Like, this is the classic. You're out and about, HR are rubbish, HR are this, and I'm like, can I just remind you, like, I feel quite strongly in this one. We are there for the support, the guidance. We are not the decision maker, remember. We are not the decision maker. You do not know what is happening behind the scene. HR might be saying, you need to do, you shouldn't be doing. But the manager, the senior leader team will do their own thing at times. So I feel quite strongly that we are in a scapegoat at times.
Yeah.
But remember, like, processes, we're guiding the process. We're trying our bloody hardest at times to make sure that we keep people on the straight and narrow, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
But there are the gung-ho's approach of, nah, that's great advice, but we're not taking it. So we need to be very careful that great HR is putting that media headline and bring it on, but actually there's more, see, beyond the HR department as well, and we try our damned hardest to keep people straight on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can't happen.
Yeah, I mean, there were some things that came out of that did highlight, you know, be really positive. So things like a stronger protection for whistleblowers, which seems pretty good, you know, and if they can do something like that. And then it was an interesting one around banning non-disclosure agreements. And I you know, I don't know the ins and outs of that, but it seems like something like that would be of benefit. And also the issues around almost having a legal requirement to have salary bands on job adverts. You know, I know that from a recruiter's point of view, we're always suggesting that people put on the salary so people can make a realistic judgment of what their, you know, what the potential is. Yeah. But actually, you know, having those salary bands, making that a legal requirement would really open up that process and hopefully start to move us away from this pay gap issue that still persists.
Absolutely. You probably get questions every day in terms of, do I have to put salary on? What are the benefits of it? And you probably see the success rate, I guess, with advertising the salary versus not advertising the salary.
Absolutely. And I know that's definitely the case because, you know, how do people find jobs? They're looking online. You know, all these elements add up to people being able to find the right job for them, because again, it's a decision based on salary, but also based on culture, based on various elements. So being able to find the right one, but actually more importantly, having that salary puts it out there that this is our organization, this is what we're willing to pay, and it doesn't matter who you are, you know, where you're coming from. This is what we anticipate. The person who takes this job will get paid, and I think that's really important. And I think that's, I suppose, what's coming out from that. You're right. I mean, the criticism of HR departments is a really valid point that we're here to advise. We'll give you advice. We'll try our very best. We'll suggest these are the approaches, but people still have to make the decision, don't they? And I think that's, you know,
the amount of kind of, like, you laugh at this one, like the amount of times where, like, you're just blamed. HR is blamed for loads of things. Oh, I'm sorry, I had to sack. HR was telling me I had to do it. Like, no, own your decision. Like, if that makes you feel better and sleep at night, fine. But
yeah,
we're there to help and support and guide you. We're not there to make the decision for you. So I do quite like seeing that media attention, because I just want to stand up and go, no, absolutely not. I want to put it right out there, because yes, HR are there, but they maybe don't have the power that decision makers are having. We're there to influence, guide, do all our good stuff that way. But in a lot of cases, the decision is not made by us.
It's not always made by HR. That's good. And so a lot of this comes back to culture. So just a couple of things to finish off with to help people to build that culture. I suppose a lot of this around avoiding bullying or trying to avoid bullying. Obviously, you can't always get it all the time, but is it about building the right culture? Is it about getting the right and open and transparent culture? Would that be right?
Absolutely. And sniff it out. Like, if there's you might have a formal grievance on your desk, but you might hear things, like, go and investigate, get to the bottom of things before it manifests into something that it didn't have to be, or it's a last straw for people before they leave. Like, if there's any kind of sniff going about from a couple of people in a survey, although it's not the majority, like, what are you doing about it? Find out, get to the core to find out what's happening, and that's dead hard, we know that, but try and sniff out anything that's going on that you need to try and fix.
Yeah. Is it a challenging conversation to do that? So I can understand if somebody says, well, it kind of seems like that might be happening, but I'm not quite sure. Is that a challenging conversation, or is there any HR issues around how you approach that? I suppose there's good practice, isn't there, in saying, listen,
you want your examples. You want your examples. I mean, people saying, oh, I think is not, like, that's great, but it's a deeper dive. You think, but where are you getting that thought from? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How are people behaving? How does the organisation work? All of that nice stuff to try and form a picture of, right, okay, do we have a problem here? Is it something just to keep an eye on as well? But that's the negative, like, celebrate the good culture pieces as well. So absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time today. As ever, a good conversation, a good chat around that. And I know there's lots of discussion around this just now because it's on the news, but it's always a topic that comes up on a regular basis. So thank you very much for your time, and I will see you next week.
See you next week. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Thanks everyone for listening today. Please get in touch if you want to find out more on today's subject.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review.